Hello, everybody. Welcome to the 26th episode of Love Bomb. I am
Wow.
joined by a returning guest, which is Tori
Yeah.
Tecken, the lovely Tori Tecken, who will not be changing her name despite the fact that she
That
writes
is correct.
military fantasy. Hi, Tori.
That's correct. Hello. I woke up and chose some violence on Instagram the other day.
I thought that
because
was
I
fine.
like,
And we got to see the new bookshelves in their glory.
Yes. Yeah.
So this is something that Philip, I think, or not Philip, Alan, more than anybody else, was like mind blown of how tall you are. Like Alan, when he found out how tall you were, was like, this is incomprehensible. And I feel like we finally got to see in a video just how tall you actually are with those shelves.
Well, the bookshelves are 8 feet tall. And part of it was my old bookshelves are they 6 feet? I don't even know if they're quite 6 feet. But I'm as tall as my old white bookshelves. So it was actually quite weird that I need a step stool to comfortably reach the top shelf now.
Yeah. Welcome to what the rest of us are dealing with.
Yeah, exactly. I have a whole new
Yeah.
appreciation. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I appreciate this about YouTube so much, where I'm like, we look like we're the same height right now.
Yeah.
We could not be further from that. So yeah, I mean, we could be a little bit further, but I mean, like, there's pretty much a foot between you and I. So
yeah. Well, I'm excited to go to some conventions in the next couple of years because I know I'm also taller than some of my male friends on BookTube. And so it's just going to be fun to see people be like, Tori, oh my gosh.
Yeah, exactly. And you're just hovering over them. I love that. Yeah. So to get to what I usually ask at the beginning, have you been reading or watching anything or writing anything that you have been loving lately?
Yes. So I just finished I have actually read and completed a Stephen King novel as of today.
Okay.
So
which one?
Hold the applause.
Yeah.
Doomakey.
Okay.
So Andrew Wizard, I had reached out to him a while back and I was like, all right, Wizard, as my closest Stephen King aficionado friend,
right?
My taste. Where is my best chance of enjoying a Stephen King novel? I do not like horror, straight horror.
Yeah.
I don't like a lot of heavy sexual content, which King is known for in some areas.
Yeah.
So I was like, what do you got for me? Is there a book that Stephen King has written that you think I would enjoy? And so he thought about it and he was like, well, I think your two best shots are probably Doomakey or Needful Things. And read the synopsis of Doomakey and I was like, all right, bet I'll try it.
Yeah.
And I'm still in the hangover, to be perfectly honest with you. It surprised
me. I love a good hangover. Yeah.
Yeah, it was really good. And I appreciated the experience of it because I can understand from a writing standpoint why people are so drawn into his work.
Right.
Because it kind of sneaks up on you and you don't realize how much you're invested until you try to put it down.
Yeah.
So yeah, I finished it and there was definitely some psychological thriller, minor horror vibes at the end. And I had to put it down last night and finish it this morning because I was a little creeped out.
Yeah. Fair.
But yeah, I was very, very pleasantly surprised at how much I enjoyed it.
My experience with Stephen King is also very limited because of the reasons you mentioned. It might be the only novella that I've read, but I might have read the whole collection, was Shawshank Redemption, which I've read about 4 or 5 times because I love it. Yeah. It's really, really, I think it's excellently written. But it's part of a collection that I think is called The Seasons or something along those lines, which I read in high school, but I can't remember if we read the other ones or if we just read Shawshank because I honed in on that one and thought this is good writing. And I loved it. And I love the movie too. So, I mean, it's great.
I've never seen the film.
Have you not? It's great. Oh, it's so good.
I've seen Green Mile. I have not read it. And the film version of Green Mile was also just mind-blowing and incredible. And I bawled. But yeah, so I don't anticipate I don't see myself turning into a Stephen King fan.
Fair.
However, I really wanted to experience his writing for once in a way that I like, like I asked Wizard, the best possible option for me personally.
Yeah, I think it's always nice when someone knows your reading preferences and tastes and they're familiar with the author that you are hoping to read, because they can guide you in a way that you don't have to dig through all the minutia to get there.
Yeah. Well, and I appreciate, because like now that I have a group of friends on BookTube that know my reading dislikes and likes so well, I will get messages on a regular basis that are like, so I'm reading this book right now. You might want to take it off your TBR because of this content. And I really appreciate that, because I've dodged a few bullets that way.
Yes, I will not be recommending any more romance novels for you, or things of that nature.
Hey, I'm still gonna try. What's the other? You sent me Happy Place, and what was the other one?
Oh, I can't remember. It's been a hot minute.
Is it Funny Story?
I do love Funny Story. I almost wonder though,
I have that one,
because her new one, I think that or Funny Story, I think would be the ones, if there were to be any of hers that would work for you, it would be those. The newest one is the least romance heavy. So I think there's a good chance of that. And it's 2 timelines that are happening, which I really enjoy. And it's done from a reporter trying to write a story on this like old money heiress and how essentially the paparazzi became a thing, like with her family. And it's kind of based on like the Hearsts and the Rockefellers and like that type of thing. But I really loved it. It was not everyone's cup of tea, because I think a lot of people wanted it to be more romance heavy. I just vibe with her style of writing and her use of language. That for me it worked, but I know that's not going to be the case for everyone. But I love Funny Story. I absolutely love Funny Story. For me, it has that quintessential good feel of like a 90s rom-com that I'm like, it's like a
just
vibe
a feel good.
Yeah, exactly. But it's like legitimately funny. Like there were moments that I was laughing out loud, which for me, I've come to learn as a reader, I really enjoy. So it's one of the reasons that like I like Terry Pratchett's style of writing, because he makes me laugh. I know you're not big with Joe Abercrombie, but Abercrombie is the same thing.
Oh, I think he's very funny though.
Yeah, he's absolutely funny. So if an author can actually make me laugh out loud, like chances are that book is automatically a 4 or 5 star book for me, just because I'm like, that's good.
Well, it's hard because being actually funny is way harder than being dramatic. And I know like for anybody that's been in theater, like comedic timing is something that it really takes a lot of intentional effort to learn. I mean, you get the rare person that just kind of happens upon it a little bit more naturally, but for the most part, it's really hard to get that comedic timing.
Yeah. I've always said, in regards to television, I'm like, I think it's way harder to produce a good comedy than it is to produce a good drama, because I mean, like, I feel like when you look at the grand scheme of television, there's so many dramas, and I'm like, how many comedies can you say you actually really enjoy?
Love?
And like, the number is always going to be significant.
Very small.
Yeah, it's small. So, I mean, I think like Ted Lasso for me was probably as close to perfection as will probably exist, but I love it. Absolutely love it.
Weirdly, I think one of my favorite comedy films, and I'll probably get side-eyed for this a little bit, but the newer Jumanji.
I love this. I was just saying
so good.
Yes, I was just saying this to Josh last week because he hasn't watched it, and I was like, it's arguably The Rock and Kevin Hart's best performance.
Well, and like, this isn't meant to be, unkind, but The Rock is The Rock in every movie he's ever been in, right?
I love it.
And that's fine. But the combination of The Rock and Kevin Hart
is perfect. And also Jack Black thinking,
oh my gosh,
a young girl stuck in his body. It's hysterical. It's absolutely hysterical.
Yeah.
And I'm a Karen Gillan fan from Doctor Who. So like all in all, it rounds out, and it is just,
it was a great cast.
Yeah. It's so, so good. I 100% agree. I will not side eye you for that at all.
Good. Okay, cool. And I have to say, even as like much of a, when I saw Nick Jonas was going to be in his brother,
Nick Jonas,
was in it, I was like, okay, but honestly, he did okay.
I thought he did fine.
You did fine.
Honestly, I thought everyone in that did really, really okay. But yeah, I
no, don't worry, Derry. Lots of love for Karen Gillian.
Yes.
She's her like pretending to flirt scene in that film is
funny.
Hilarious.
So funny. That's basically Josh in a nutshell.
Like gender bent Josh.
Yeah, honestly, it's one of those things that I always used to laugh because Josh and I dated long distance for a few years. And people would always ask me, like, aren't you worried that, like, you're not there and you can't keep an eye on him? I'm like, have you seen him talk to a woman? I'm like, I have nothing.
Not worried.
About. Like, nothing whatsoever. So yeah, every time I see stuff like that, I'm like, Josh.
Yeah. That is awesome.
Yeah, but I love a good comedy, so that's always good.
Yeah. See, that's the thing with Ben too. Like he's very suave when he wants to be, but like if somebody else is, when we were dating in college or like in high school when I first met him, somebody was flirting with him, it just like completely goes over his head. And afterwards I'll just be all like annoyed and just be like, oh my gosh, what a like, ugh, can't believe it. And he's like, wait, what happened?
Exactly. That's so funny. See, Josh knows. It's just that like the responses are so stunted and awkward that I'm like, settle down. It's fine. It's absolutely fine. I actually used to laugh because whenever we would go out in the city and stuff, we would go get coffee and he would go to the coffee bar and pay. And waitresses and stuff would flirt with him. And I would be sitting at the table just laughing because I was like, this for me is actually front row comedy. Like I get to, it's like, yeah, it's like improv. It's perfect. I love it so much. So yeah, I get a great kick out of anything like that. But you do awesome. Have your new beautiful shelves behind you and cold silver's there. So that's very exciting. Do you have your favorite shelf or shelves at this point?
I mean, I'm kind of in that weird period where I'm like testing out how I want it to look. And I'm still getting used to okay, there we go. I mean, this is my, like, I've got my City Watch and I've got Red Rising, and then let's see, what else do I have?
Is it just the first 3 Red Rising that are there, or?
Absolutely.
Okay, yes.
Yeah. Which is the correct decision.
Yes, it is. We've established, yes.
I will say, and I know you haven't read Lightbringer yet, so you have like zero hope, and I completely understand that.
No.
I after reading Lightbringer, he still made a couple decisions in Lightbringer that I was like, but I could see him. It's so interesting as a writer, like watching the undertone of what's going on at the desk in a book, because I could see him course correcting in Lightbringer, which was really interesting. And I think he, eliminated some of the complaints that we had in Dark Age and Iron Gold.
Which were substantial.
Which were pretty substantial. But I have a little bit of hope for Red God. I'm curious to see after all of that if it continues in the vein of Lightbringer, and I feel like it probably will. So yeah,
I hope so.
I do too.
I hope so.
So yeah, but I mean, the nice part is it's not like the series. It's not like you have to read the entire series to get a lot out of the original trilogy, which is what I really love about it, because first trilogy is still going to be one of my favorite series of all time, and which is great
because for me, I've gone the opposite way where it's ruined the first 3 books for me in many ways. And I'm like, and I said to Josh, because Josh had a very similar experience to me with reading the first 3 books, that he loved them, and I was like, just stop and enjoy it. Yeah. So, which he's decided to do because I know his reading taste well enough that I know he's going to hate the next one, so he can continue to enjoy and live in his Red Rising bubble.
Yeah. I think it's partially because I had read them so many times by the time I got to the second series, because I've read the first book probably 7 or 8 times. So it wasn't as big of a reach for me to just, and I'm also, not to say #trauma, but like, I'm also very good at compartmentalizing.
Yeah.
So I can kind of just like, this is Red Rising and this is other.
Yeah. I do struggle with that. It's like Game of Thrones is probably the best example where like I don't feel I can go back and watch the show ever again because I loathe the ending so much and I'm like it's ruined for me. So I do struggle with that. Like I really do struggle with that. With certain things I try more to separate it and I'm a bit more successful, but it's not great. It's always just kind of lingering.
Yeah. Well, I'm curious. So moving, because are you still reading quite a bit or are you just kind of putting that to the side right now?
I wish I was reading more, but mental health, I haven't had the capacity to read a lot lately. It's weird. I know that my mental health is poor for me when I'm over reading or I'm under reading.
Sure.
So in January, I read 20 books and I was like,
wow.
Or I read 20 books in December and 19 books in January. And I was like, I don't think we're doing so hot. And then we took a really steady decline after that. And I think in February, I think I forced myself to read like a couple of books. And since then, I've maybe read like 1 or 2 books a month. So last month, my friends and I are in a book club, my best friends and I, that we started because we all live in different places so that we could actively like hang out with each
together
other.
And yep.
It was my pick and I chose One Dark Window, which I liked the premise of and the sound of. And like on a normal given day, I was like, I would really like this. But like, I was like, I'm just not in the right headspace to be reading right now. And I was like, I need something that for me, I know will be successful. And that's been re-listening to First Law. So I restarted the Blade itself. I'm doing the audiobook, but I'm only doing about, and probably between 25 to 45, 50 minutes a day. So it's been really slow.
Yeah.
But I listen to it while I walk. So for me, it's kind of that time where I can try to disconnect, do something else. But I miss reading. Like it's one of those things where it's such a big part of my identity, and depression is mean. And it tries to steal that joy from you. And unfortunately for the last little while, it's been winning. But I'm trying really hard to like pull it back to myself. And I mean, I love rereading. Like I'm a big rereader. I didn't used to be until last year where it really kind of spiraled for me, where I read ACOTAR, as we all know, like 20 million times. And it's funny now that I've read all of First Law and Age of Madness and all that kind of stuff, where I'm like, okay. And I can see all of the things that were woven. I'm like, this is fun, because I haven't read these before. So it's a first time reread for those. So I enjoy that.
Nice.
Hello, Brian.
Hey, Brian.
Vodafone kind of guy. But yeah, mostly to answer, where did Derry's question go?
There's a couple up there.
Yeah, I have been writing. I finished the first draft of my second book and I'm now in edits for that.
Nice.
Thank you. So that is tiring. It's at that stage. I don't know if you have this stage, but I have this stage where when I start to go through it, I'm like, I hate this. This is garbage. Who's going to read this? And I'm kind of at the stage with it right now. And it's really different, obviously, because when I wrote the first book, no one really knew I was writing a book. Like a few people knew.
Right.
And it was mostly for myself. And now it's going to be out in the world officially in 2 days, but several people have read it now and have messaged me being like,
quite a few. Yeah.
When's book 2 coming? And I'm like, great question. I hope soon.
Yes.
And it's one of those things where I'm like, it's so lovely that people ask, but simultaneously it's really weird to then have like an associated pressure felt with writing now.
It's a completely different, it's a completely different thing.
It's a really strange thing. So I'm trying to acclimatize to that with writing and reminding myself that I don't have to put anyone else's expectations on my writing other than my own. But yeah, it's a really weird process. And like, I had a couple of people message me yesterday and being like, 4 days, how are you feeling? I was like, I have 2 therapy sessions today. That's where I'm at. So, which I did. I had one at 1 o'clock and one at 5 o'clock. It was a busy day, but it's just one of those things where I'm like, it's weird. It's really, really weird. And I love writing very much and I'm grateful for it. But what a wild experience.
Oh yeah, it really is. Well, and there's so much, it's like having a baby. Like there's so many things that you can textbook learn ahead of time.
Yeah.
But actually going through it and like
it's so
experiencing
weird.
Everything is a whole different beast. And especially when, like you said, your first book, like when I wrote Phased, I didn't have an online community the way I do now.
Right.
And so I could just write it and it was just me and my dream of this book and I published it. And then when Bloodstones came out, that's when I started realizing like, oh, there's like a community of people who are excited about this book and ready to support this book, which is amazing and wonderful. But you start putting pressure on yourself because of that. Easily. And it's not something that's coming from outside. It's a lot of writers do a fantastic job of pressurizing the inside of their brain.
Oh yeah. It's been an experience. Yeah, the whole thing is just really, it's so weird, right? Because you write something and you're like, here's a part of my soul. Please rate it between 1 and 5 stars. Yes. And you're just like, and also leave a review. Like,
please leave a review on Amazon and Goodreads.
Yeah, it's such a strange thing because writing is such an intimate thing, I find, and it's normally it's a solitary thing unless you're co-authoring something. And once it's handed over to other people, like it's not just yours anymore. And while there is magic in that, and it's really wonderful to have scary. People want to be invested in that. Yeah, it's really scary. It's really, really scary. It's weird. So
that doesn't, at least for me, that doesn't ever really go away. I think with every book, there's that little like sending your kid off to kindergarten feeling a little bit where you're just like, because like even when I came out with Cold Silver, I was like, okay, Legends of the Bruhai has a following already. Everybody's really excited for the next book. And I had to be like, well, guys, I wrote a book. No, it's not affiliated with Legends of the Bruhai in any way. And so I've been really grateful that like the reception to Cold Silver has been, no pun intended, as warm as it has been. Because I was worried about that because I was like, this is something I really need to read or to write and to put out there because it was an important story for me to tell last year.
Yeah.
But I can also understand why people waiting for book 2 are like,
Yeah.
But
and that's
it'll be good. Everybody's been great.
I mean, it's so weird too, right? Because like as a first-time author, I'm putting a book out there and I'm like, it's one of a multiple books in a series. Please take a chance on a series. It's not finished. It has not been written yet, but come along for the ride. Yeah, it's just the whole thing is a really it's a lesson in humility.
It really is.
Yeah, in many, many ways. And I mean, like you and I had talked about it off screen because like I received a 1-star review and I was like, I feel like I'm an author now. Like it happened. I've been initiated in. And I mean, there's different ways that you can always go about it, and knowing that not everyone is going to love your book and it's not going to resonate with everybody. It's going to, I find is helpful, but it's just the whole experience it's very strange. I don't know if I'll ever get used to it, but
no, probably not.
Probably not.
We can hope. I think you do in some ways because you just kind of roll with it. And like, for me, I make it a game. Where I am like, okay, how many of the stars have we collected so far? You're like, and you kind of, oh, yep, there's my first 2-star. That's the last one I was missing. That's
the only one I'm missing thus far. I'm like the 2. I think it makes sense for the 2 to be last. I feel like 2s are probably the most infrequently given.
It is. Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think Bloodstones has more 2-stars than 1-stars, but I think part of that's just 1-star reviews are so interesting to me. Like I've only given out a couple, and they're usually for a book that I had such a deeply visceral reaction to in a negative way that
Same.
I just can't handle it.
Yeah.
Not naming any names.
Same.
But but sometimes like 1 star and sometimes the 2 stars too could be like the most unhinged reviews where you're just like, what?
And also hilarious, like so funny. I have been compelled to read books based on 1-star reviews. I'm like,
Totally.
interesting.
Oh yeah,
Interesting.
absolutely.
Yeah.
I've purchased books off of negative reviews before.
Oh,
Like,
100%.
that sounds amazing.
I'm like,
I want
all
that.
the things you don't like, check, check, check. That's all the things I love. Which
Yep.
is funny because I was talking to that book club last night. We were talking about books that we want to read or that some of us have read. And you would hate this book, but I love this book. And that's Butcher and Blackbird by Bryn Weaver, which is a dark romance novel. And it's hysterically funny. Like, she wrote it to be very comedic.
Yeah.
And what sold me on the book was the list of trigger warnings that she has at the beginning of the book. One of which is listed as accidental cannibalism. And right underneath it is not so accidental cannibalism. And I was like, sold. And my best friend was like, absolutely not. And I was like, see that and my other best friend that was in the chat was like, oh, I'm completely in on that. And I was like, there you go. It's just, it's funny what will sell you on a book and not sell you on a book per person.
Yep. And I also love how unhinged book people are just in general.
Yeah.
It's great. Like, what sold you on this book? Well, there was a mention of accidental cannibalism.
Yeah.
So I figured that sounded like a good time.
I thought it would be. And you know what? I was 100% correct. It was a great time. And I reread that book like 3 or 4 times in a year and a half. So yeah, I've had a great time with it. But yeah, it's so weird because I feel like since I started my little booktube experiment here, I've branched into areas of reading that I didn't think I would branch into.
Same.
Yeah, and that's been really wonderful. And I mean, like, some people might look at it from the outside and be like, oh, well, you read romance now. Like, you didn't really like go up in the world of reading. And I'm like, I've had a great time. I feel like reading wide or wider is the best thing you can do as an author and a writer.
Totally agree.
Yeah, because there's so many things that you just learn from different genres. And I was actually talking to a girl about this today who's beta reading for me, but she's also just written her first novel. And I was saying, my writers group is an epic fantasy writer or a high fantasy writer and a horror writer. And they're reading and critiquing my romantasy novel. And I was like, and it's great because there's different elements that you can pull from each of these things. I was like, fantasy readers in general and writers are going to know good character work. Horror is going to know, suspense,
atmosphere,
setting the scene really well, pacing. Like, there's just so many things. And with romance, I was like, phenomenal banter. Like, romance for me has had the best banter. So it's one of those things that I feel like I have benefited very, very much from reading different genres. And I wasn't doing that a couple of years ago. I was in I liked my little fantasy box and it was fine. And it's fine to stay in those boxes if that's where you're comfortable. But I definitely have enjoyed expanding my catalog.
Yeah, I have too. I've been really enjoying getting into some mystery and thriller this year. And I mean, I love a slow burn fantasy novel. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that I couldn't get out of my head when I was reading Doomakey this last couple of weeks was it's a slow burn, and it's so well done. So I'm sitting there as a fantasy author and I'm looking at, okay, how does a psychological thriller handle a slow burn and what's different and what's similar about it? And it's so fascinating. Or, also the book I read prior to finishing Doomakey was a Japanese modern novel, If Cats Disappeared from the World. And Japanese modern, contemporary novels, the really short ones, are usually very, the storytelling style is very simple and straightforward. Mm-hmm. And it also deals with a lot of very deep themes in that simple and straightforward style, which I find really an interesting combination. Sure. And just there's so much that you can say like I've really learned how you can say a lot about those themes without having to get super flowery and like drag on for an entire
get to the
500.
point. Yeah.
And it's interesting just kind of digesting all of that kind of
For
storytelling.
sure. Yeah, it's been funny for me too, because when I started writing, the books that I was reading for the most part were all in third person. So I was like, oh, you write in third person. And then I started reading a few books in first person. I was like, oh, or you can write books in first person.
Hear me out.
Like this, And it's even small things like that that really can change your perspective on things. And I love a good genre bendy story. That for me is always really exciting. And I mean, that's one of those things that like you and I have talked about, in the sense that that's what my book is going to be. If you guys hear squeaking in the background, that was Josh trying to be subtle with our basement door, and he wasn't. But I feel like we're starting to see a bit more of that, where people, I think, are starting to take more risks with that, especially in indie, which is something that we were kind of talking about a little bit on our panel the other day. But I feel like that's because more people are reading wider, and it's really nice. I think it's great.
Yeah. I mean, I keep thinking back to like one of my favorite indie genre blends that I've read so far is Jacqueline Hagan's Wickwire Watch. I mean, she literally took gaslamp Dickensian storytelling and smushed it into epic fantasy. And it's just such an interesting, because I've read like gaslamp stuff before, but nothing that felt like you were still reading an epic fantasy novel. And Jacqueline hit that mark so well. It still blows my mind thinking about how the atmosphere and everything is so it's both of those things equally, and it's so good.
Yeah, I love that. So I haven't read it yet. I will eventually one day when I return to new book reading.
I think you'd really, I could see you enjoying that one.
Multiple people have told me that they thought I would like it. I recently bought a few books thinking I was ready to return to new reading. The Raven Scholar was one of the new ones.
I've been seeing that one go around.
Yeah, and I read the first 6 pages and I was like, I'm not ready. But they were a good first 6 pages. So I feel confident that when I get to it, it'll be good. But yeah, it's weird because even though, you get that calling sometimes where you're like, okay, I want to read more diversely. I also very strongly get that calling where I'm like, I want to lean back into epic fantasy. I want to lean back into grimdark fantasy. Like there's a very specific genre that I'm like, it needs to be this right now at this moment, because that's what my body and soul need.
That's fair.
Yeah.
There have been times where I've thrown out my entire TBR and I've gone back and read White Fang or Red Rising or like, and just said, I just need like a comfort reset. And that is okay.
Yeah, not yet, Derry.
What Pratchett have you read?
I have read Mort. I've read Going Postal, and I have read The Combined Good Omens. So I'm still quite new to the Pratchett world. Hello, Daniel. But I find with him that because they're so episodic, that I'm never in a rush. Like I finished one and I'm like, that was great. But then I move on to something usually bigger series wise. And then when I want a break, if it rhymes with Schmaine Schmoston, then that would be my guess. But that would be it.
I need to read Persuasion this summer. That's one of my that's my next Jane Austen. I can't wait. I'm really excited about it, actually. I was surprised at how much I enjoyed Northanger Abbey. Because like
Evie said she thought that's the one I would like the most.
I can see you enjoy it because it's more has some more like satirical undertones than some of her other stories, and it's
like a good satire.
Yeah, and she kind of picks fun at some of the like mainstream stories of the day in a way, which is fun. And she breaks the fourth wall a little bit. Which, I mean, having grown up with all of the different iterations of Pride and Prejudice, Sense and Sensibility,
so
Persuasion.
I'm going to interject myself here because Evie and I just had this debate as to which of the adaptations of Pride and Prejudice is the best one. So do you have a favorite?
That's not a question, Laura. There isn't a question there.
Which
one exists? One exists and one does not in my world.
I feel like we are not going to be on the same team for this.
Probably not. Which one do you think I will die
I think you're the Colin Firth one.
The 1990s?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, Evie and I are
correct. I'm not surprised by that at all. Nope, not surprised at all. See, Evie and I've had this discussion. I feel like we've had this discussion, right? The BBC miniseries is hands down my Pride and Prejudice. I've seen the 2005 once. I will never watch it again. I am not a Keira Knightley fan. I cannot stand her as an actress. Okay. No offense to Keira Knightley. Bless her heart. But it was like the 95 was perfection. Like it's
for me. Keira Knightley's not my favorite actress. Like I'm just gonna say that. I like her, but she's not my favorite. Matthew McFadden though, and this is where Evie and I like really got into the minutia of this. I think he's so perfect as Darcy. Like I just think he's such a perfect Darcy.
I thought he did a good job.
He's not super pretty. You know, like for me, I'm like Darcy reads more Matthew McFadden to me than he does Colin Firth. But for me,
it would depend too on how because I've never thought of Colin Firth as like, oh wow, what a heartthrob. Like that was never
fair.
You know,
but the music for me is the main thing of the music was one good. That I'm like, I literally would just put on the movie a lot of the time. So I had this
the one thing I will say about the 2005 is, and I'm gonna forget his name because I'm horrible with movies that I have only seen once. But the actor who played Mr. Collins in the 2005,
he's so good.
S tier. Like the one in the 90s, I would actually, that is the one piece of the 2005 that I would actually put even over the 95.
Okay.
His portrayal of Collins.
I love Mrs. Bennet as well in the 2005 one. I love her. I think she's great. And Donald Sutherland being just Donald Sutherland. I'm like, perfection.
My friend Casey and I recently did a rewatch of the Hunger Games films the other day or the other month, and there were at least 4 or 5 moments where we paused the films and were like, can we just Donald Sutherland?
I know.
Can we just
appreciate
briefly?
I brought a hat to wear for our chat because you normally have something on your head, so I'm gonna put my little Canada hat on here and rep my Donald Sutherland because he was Canadian.
Yep.
So here we go. But it's funny, like he's just so good. And the movie that I grew up with him in was not, oh God, why am I blanking? It was Kelly's Heroes. Kelly's Heroes was the name of the film, which is this Clint Eastwood movie that very few people I've met have ever seen because it's like a comedy. And it takes place during the Second World War where Clint Eastwood basically gets assigned this mission to go over enemy lines into this town where there's a ton of hidden gold bars. And Donald Sutherland is basically what you would have thought of for the peace movement hippie from the 70s, but like in the Second World War, who is just like high as a kite and runs tanks. And I'm like, perfection.
See, that's the thing. I love because there are some really good actors that are really good at playing a certain role, right? Yeah. And then there are actors who are just incredible at the full range. It's one of the reasons why Alan Rickman was one of my favorite actors.
The best.
Because you go from Sheriff of Nottingham, where he plays the most incredible villain, and then you have, Snape, who's an anti-hero, and then you have Colonel Brandon, who, I'm sorry, I don't care which Pride and Prejudice you like, Colonel Brandon is the Austen hero for me, like period.
Yeah. I love him in Love Actually.
The whole range. I have never seen that.
Oh my gosh. His talk about comedic timing, him playing off of Rowan Atkinson in Love Actually is like arguably one of the best things put on television ever.
Yep.
It is so funny. And like when when Josh and I got married, so because of immigration purposes, Josh and I didn't live together before we got married. And Josh, therefore, didn't understand how religiously I take my holiday viewing of movies. So I have Halloween movies, and then I've got my Christmas movies, and there's the list. You can't deviate from the list. And Love Actually is on the list. It's like the top one. And I said to him, I was like, I'm baking and I'm putting on Love Actually. I expect you to be in the room, like somewhere in the room.
Experience.
Yeah, to experience Love Actually, because he hadn't seen it. And he was like, yeah, I'm not going to watch that. And I was like, well, this is going to be a problem.
So, deal breaker.
Yeah, I was like, I know we've been together for like 5 years, but like, so at that point, I was making cookies and I was in the kitchen, which at the house we were living in at the time was adjacent to my living room, and I could see my TV from my baking bench. And because I had a baking bench, and he sat down and was cackling at this scene between Rowan Atkinson and Professor Snape, Alan Rickman. And I was like, you see, it's perfection. And then every year since then, he's like, we have to watch Love Actually. I'm like, yeah, fine. It's great. So yeah, it's so good. Evie says Colonel Brandon is the best Austen hero if you remove the pattern of behavior of pursuing 13-16-year-old girls. There's that too. Yeah, I need to catch up on some comments here because I'm really bad at this. I just reread Hunger Games. Donald Sutherland is 100% President Snow. Yeah,
he really is.
He really embodies the role.
We talked about that in general with Hunger Games, like just how well done the casting was for those films. Like, regardless of how you feel about the story itself, the casting was spot on. Like, they did such a good job.
The only person initially that I wasn't sold on was Peeta. The actor for Peeta. I was like, I didn't love him in the first one, but as they went on, I was like, oh no, I see it. And I got there by the end. But really, like, even the secondary and side characters, like Rue and stuff, and I'm like, yep, spot on. Hey, Joanna, good to see you. Joanna, at some point we need to read Crystal Cave. I believe that's the name of the book. Yep, Crystal Cave. I'm looking at it. We want to read Mary Stuart. Have you read Mary Stuart at all? She writes Arthurian stuff.
Okay, that's probably why I haven't read
my mom is like a Arthur aficionado. She reads all the King Arthur stuff, and I frothed over the Warlord Chronicles. Like, it's just arguably, it's possibly my favorite trilogy of all time. Like, I love it so much. It's a strong contender for number one. And she thinks that Mary Stuart is better. And I was like, well, that's a strong claim.
Okay.
That's strong, bold claims.
Yeah. I feel like with the Winter King trilogy, like, I'm not an Arthurian legends reader to begin with.
Yeah.
And the other thing that scares me is I do tend to have, like, how do I put this? I've been let down by very hyped books a lot.
I think you'll like these.
I think I might too. I've tried to put some space in between the initial, like, all of my friends were like, oh my gosh, this is the most incredible thing since sliced bread, versus reading it. And I also have to be in a very specific headspace for Arthurian legends because it's just not my thing. I just don't care.
Yeah, I totally get that. Honestly, the thing that I liked the most about it, which I've said to a few people, is that I read it as historical fiction because he did so much research on what the British Isles were like during that time period that I was like, regardless of the Arthur stuff, like, it is a history lesson of Britain. And to the point where he's talking about how specific tribes of peoples looked. And I'm like, yes, that is correct. So the level of detail that he put into research for me alone makes it worth reading. Like, and I'm not someone that likes fight scenes and stuff, which I know you do. And I find he writes them really well.
Well written fight
And that's
scenes.
the thing. I find that they are very well written scenes. And the thing that I love about the story as well is that it's not from Arthur's perspective. that it's from Derval's perspective. I'm like,
that
that
would make
to
a
me
big
makes it
difference for me
so
too.
much more interesting. Yeah, it's that outsider looking in, and I mean, like, he is a soldier and all that kind of stuff turned monk, but it's just brilliantly
and I think
written.
too, in fairness to Cornwell, I don't think it had anything to do with the Winter King either, but I read Lancelot by Giles Christian.
Yeah.
And that was also a very lauded Arthurian.
Yeah, people have tried to sell me on that one, and I haven't read it.
It's one of my biggest letdowns in the last 2 to 3 years on BookTube.
Wow.
I thought it was not anywhere near as good as people were telling me. And one of the things that always drives me nuts about anything Arthurian is Guinevere's character, in my opinion, is never written in a way that is satisfying or interesting or
she's interesting in these. She's
good.
Super interesting.
I'm glad to hear it.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, the Lancelot book made me so mad. It made me so mad.
I completely understand that, because I usually really find her character to be she's either watered down to be really that, or she's amped up to be like hyper pious. And in this one, she's neither of those things. It's a very interesting take on it. And Derry, yes, I agree. Stanley Tucci is one of those actors I love to watch if he's in a movie or a TV show.
Yeah.
But
Alan Tudyk is one of mine. He's like, can we put him in more actual like live action films, please? That would be fantastic.
I love Alan Tudyk. I love him so much. I'm not sure if Warlord would be for Tori. It might not be, but I do think
I will try it someday.
Yeah, probably. I do think there's aspects of it you will like. I will say that for me, book one is the worst of the three, just because I found that it was way darker than I was expecting it to be with book one.
Yeah.
But then I found that it kind of, you either just get used to it or it tapered. It's one or the other. Right. Yeah, Warlord has the best fight scenes.
See, I love a well-written fight scene. I really do.
Yep. The shield wall as a fighting strategy is put on amazing display by. Yeah, it is.
That is one thing I will say. Faithful in the Fallen was kind of iffy for me in a lot of ways, but I think one of the things that I enjoyed the most about it is the way that Gwyn wrote the shield wall formations too. So I love when something a little bit less common like that in combat is written very engagingly and well. So yeah, I get really annoyed when authors dig into the like super technical details and each action, and it's about the movements as opposed to you're in a character's head. Like, you know.
Exactly. I don't need to know every single spin move, parry, and all that.
Riposte, or however you say that.
Yeah, no, I don't need to know. I don't care. So are you taking a break from writing now? Are you currently writing? Yes, I know you're writing.
I'm so ready to, I feel like I took a break from writing, to be honest, because I was done with the final draft of Cold Silver in February. Yeah. And really since then, it's been all the editing, marketing, admin things, as you know, and the fun stuff. And I have been like, it's like an itch you can't scratch after a while, where you're just like, I am going to literally lose my mind if I can't put all this down and start writing again, because that's what I actually like to do. So now that the launch is done and Cold Silver has had a really good reception, and I'm really excited about that. Now that kind of stuff is starting to slow down a little bit. And I started working on the novella, the 1.5 novella for Legends of the Bruhai. And I'm about 2,000 words into it. And my goal is to write it in June and July.
Okay.
So
how long do you think it'll be?
40K, 30 to 40K.
Yeah.
So yeah, good, like a solid novella, but it's not going to be, it feels like a good step back into the world, and it's just a single protagonist. So it's not going to be, you know, it's going to slowly move me back into that headspace for book two. but I'm loving it so far. Even just being back in the world and getting to like describe things from a third person point of view again. Yeah. I'm like a kid in a candy store.
That's funny. I love that though. I love that. Question. Are 0.5s in a series a necessary part of a series?
It depends on the series, I would say. So this one's going to be like, so Derry, you were talking about before in the chat how you like the interludes that Stephen King does. Think of the novellas as like interludes in between the larger chapters of the books. So for example, with this novella that I'm writing right now, would you have to read it to go straight from book 1 to book 2? No, I'm not going to write it that way. But it's something for, people who really love the series who want like a deeper layer of backstory. So like this one is going to go back and give an origin to one of the Bruhai characters from book 1 and his like early experiences. And it's a very different upbringing than our main character that we start with in the Bloodstones, and exposes a completely different part of the world. So, and he's also been a fan favorite. So I think it'll be a good, I think it'll be a good installment for people who really like the series and want to like dig in a little deeper, but you won't have to read it to go from book 1 to book 2.
That's still exciting though.
Yeah. I think it'll make certain aspects of book 2 land harder, if that makes sense.
For sure. It's always nice to give people a little bit more on a particular character anyway, if that's, and if you have a story to tell, not if you're forcing it, but if the story is there, then it's nice. Also not making it a novella like Sanderson where it's actually a novel.
No, I don't have that in me right now, to be honest. And I really like the idea of something short and I can play with an aspect of the world that I haven't been able to before. And as I can feel that part of my muse, if you want to call it that, kind of unlocking again. And so I've been jotting down a ton of notes for book 2 as I've been working on the novella, because that being back in that world is starting to kind of, turn some lights on again.
For sure. That's exciting.
Yeah, it's been fun so far. And I mean, this is one of my favorite characters too. So I'm excited to.
That's always nice.
His backstory. Yeah.
Yeah. At some point, I'm going to try my hand at a novella, but I have a feeling it'll become a full-fledged novel. So
I mean, I started with a short story and now it's a 46 book episodic series. So
that's generally how it goes.
I feel that.
Yeah, 100%. And I'm like, it's weird because I had planned in my head, I was like, okay, the series is 4 books, but I think between books 3 and 4, there will be a novella. And I was like, I want to write the novella before I write book 3 because there's things that will be in the novella that affect book 3 stuff. And now I'm like, I'm sitting down and as I try to write it, I'm like, this is going to be so much longer than I thought. But you never know. It might be a novella, but my hopes aren't high. My hopes are not high. And so,
it'll be fine.
Yeah, it's gonna be great. It's going to be great.
Well, that's like originally I had the idea that Queen's Wolf book 2 was going to be like probably, maybe a little bit bigger than Bloodstone. So we're looking at like maybe 160 to 175,000 words maybe.
Yeah.
And then like as I'm starting the outline and I'm thinking through like all of the major things that have to happen in this book and all of the different threads I have to weave together, I'm sitting here going, maybe
200.
It might be a little bigger than that.
Yeah. I've stopped putting word count expectations on things. I'm like, it's just going to be what it's going to be. Obviously, I don't condone like just inflating to inflate for that sake. No. I'm like, you can, narrow down and scope in and all that kind of stuff. But as you're writing, I'm like, you can always cut things.
Absolutely. So, stick it in there. You can always edit stuff out later if it's just not.
I overwrite, I find, when I'm writing a first draft, and then I can pull it back in and I'm like, that's not necessary or that's repetitive. And I already, like my book goes live on Thursday and like already I'm like, I would change that, you know, and I'm like, but that's just the reality of what it is. So with book 2, I'm trying to be more cognizant of that as I write. I'm like, have I said that already? Have I said it recently? And things like that, just because I do find, especially with fantasy, we're reminding the reader of things as we go. And you're like, certain things you do need to be reminded of, and other things I'm like, do you? So yeah, no, exactly. There's only a certain level of hand-holding that I think we need at times.
Yeah, and it surprises me sometimes in reviews how many people get frustrated with, I don't know. I feel like a lot of, this might be a slight side tangent, but I feel like a lot of mainstream storytelling now is so much based on the culture of instant gratification that we've fostered. And part of the problem with that is that now people go into something like an epic fantasy series and they get frustrated when they don't have all the answers right away at the end of book 2. And it's like, well, yeah, but that's kind of like, part of that is because if I give you everything now, the payoff later is going to be so much better, you know?
Right. Yeah.
And it's going to land heavier and harder, which is what I want it to.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's interesting how like people's expectations, I think, have changed a lot with epic in general.
Yeah, for sure.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I think we're less patient for sure.
100%.
Yeah. Most definitely. Well, I intended this to be a longer conversation, but I told you earlier, I'm feeling quite under the weather.
I'm sorry.
So, well, I'll bring you back for part 3, but tell everyone what you're looking forward to reading before I let you go.
Oh gosh, what's it? Well, I'm reading Howling Dark this month, which is book 2 of the Sun Eater series, and I'm very excited about that. And what else am I reading? Potentially Stoner by John Williams, which I've been really excited about, and then True Grit by Charles Portis. Now that my book is out, I'm ready to read it because I didn't want to read it beforehand just because I didn't want it to influence me at all.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm really excited about that. I'm reading the 6th out of 8 City Watch on audio right now and loving it. So yeah, I figured Joanna would be excited about that. So yeah, lots of good stuff coming up in the next few months here.
Well, that's exciting. Thank you again for coming to chat with me. I'm sorry that this can't be a bit longer, but next time it will be.
Okay. Thanks for having me on. And I want to wish you all the absolute best for your launch on Thursday, which is very exciting. Everybody go buy a pre-order of Laura's book.
Thank you. Thank you.
I got mine, and I'm not a romance of any kind reader, and I'm excited. I'm genuinely excited to read it. So
I am terrified, but we'll see. All right, everybody.
No, it won't. I'm excited.
Thank you all for tuning in with us on this Tuesday night. Let us know in the comments what you've been reading or watching and loving. And I hope you will join me next time where I'm going to have Brian Bell on from BellTube. We will see you next time. Bye.
Bye, everybody.